here we go. Good. What do they say? Cut once, measure twice?
Something like that.
How about cut twice, measure once? Got a little space over there. Yep. Got a little space over here. Maybe move it this way just a touch. Ready? Here we go. So the bit is getting ready to go through. There it is. This thing's gonna freaking kill me. Oh yeah, that one's cutting. Might have to grab some gloves.
Yeah, start light pressure on that one.
My God. Not supposed to be fuel on this. So what in tarnation is going on? Somebody put fuel in this thing and I wasn't looking?
Yeah, I put a few gallons in the other day.
I mean, thought they were a funny guy.
Just helping you out.
It definitely cut through right there. That's a good sign. It's just gonna fling fuel. This is a messy job. I'm gonna get a bunch of fuel in my tank too. Where'd it go? It's inside the tank now. Oh my word. That was miserable. What is up, guys? Welcome back to the channel. Thank you for tuning in on today's video. we are going to be doing an update video on the blue OBS truck back behind us. We've got a lot of work that we've done, and I want to show you guys what we've done. We've actually completed our fuel system, but not in a very normal way that you might see that's very common when switching to efuel on these OBS trucks. So I'm going to show you guys this. It's pretty neat, and I think you guys are really going to enjoy this video. Stay tuned. Let's jump right in. All right, let's get started right on top of the engine here. You can see we do have our, we're going to talk about this here in a minute. We do have our valve covers completely on, so our injectors, all that stuff is done if you've been watching this series. We did get our injector harnesses swapped over to the Super Duty style. This really cleans up these OBS trucks. Instead of having the dual plugs, we went to a single plug like on a Super Duty. We've done that on both sides. You can see all of the wiring is just, it's nicely tucked. Nicely tucked up back behind here. And then obviously you can see really sticking out here is we do have a set of riffraff diesel intake plenums. The OBS trucks obviously come with a 2-inch intake plenum. The Super Duty trucks come with a 3-inch intake plenum, so we want to get all the air that we can. That's going to equate to power, and so we've swapped over to these really nice blue billet intake manifolds for the 7.3s with a 3-inch inlet. Now this truck with the 275 200cc B code injectors that we have in this thing, it's going to require a lot of high pressure oil and a lot of fuel. So we need to go over our high pressure oil system setup that we have, and then we are going to go over our e-fuel system that we installed on this truck. Very hodgepodge together e-fuel system, but it's going to work flawlessly, and I can't wait to show you guys. So I knew I needed to get my hand on a 7.3 Powerstroke when Terminator came out with a T800 high pressure oil pump. So we're just going to take a look in here, and somewhere in here, oh, there it is, T800. So for the longest time, high pressure oil pumps in the 7.3s, you know, you could get a T500. You had the Adrenaline. Back in the day, you had the SRP1. You know, there was good options, but not a lot of them could handle the bigger injectors that guys were putting in these trucks until the T800 came to be, and we're going to be putting that thing to the test because, like I said, these B code injectors are really oil hungry, and they are going to require a lot of high pressure oil. Those B codes, they travel a long distance. They're very much like a conventional style injector in that size. So the T800, we're going to be putting it to the test. Hopefully it can keep up with these injectors. I'm super pumped to try it out, and I really think it's going to do phenomenally. And I really didn't want to go with dual pumps. That's the most common thing to do when you start getting into this injector size, but the T800 is a great option. Moving on, let's talk about the fuel system. So obviously these OBS trucks came with a plunger style fuel pump in the valley of the truck. Right here, you can see we have, get the wrenches out of the way, we do have a freeze plug installed there now, and then you can see obviously we have our regulator. This setup is from iRate Diesel. I really like the iRate Diesel regulator return setup on these trucks. They've got these really nice bent lines, stainless bent lines in here. This is obviously going to be our feed down here, so it feeds the back of the heads and then returns out of the front of the heads and then into our regulator and then out of the bottom of our regulator to head back to the fuel tank. Now I will say the rear banjo bolts on both sides, we did upgrade those to the high flow banjo bolts, so that we can make sure that we're not having any restrictions into the heads, but we kept the factory banjo bolts up front. It's on the return side, not as needed compared to our feed side going into the cylinder heads. So really nice setup from iRate. Really like these nice lines that they give. So you can see we have 1/2-inch push lock and 1/2-inch push lock feeding. Obviously it goes to -6 to feed the heads, but I wanted to have -8 up to this point, and then our return, we might as well go with -8 there too. So we just kind of snuck those lines right in behind this bracket here. Yes, it's rubbing probably in 20 different places, and maybe in 10 years it'll eventually rub through. That's okay, no big deal. Those lines will deteriorate by then. We did throw a little protection where they go over the engine cross member. You can see them in there before they catch onto the frame rail and they head back to our fuel pump. So let's jump underneath the truck and show you guys that. All right, so up underneath the truck here, some of you guys might recognize what we have here. This is actually a 6.7 Powerstroke lift pump. So this is from a 2011 to 2016 6.7 Powerstroke fuel pump, low pressure fuel pump. And that is what we have converted this truck to, being efuel now. So the neat thing, for those of you that have been longtime followers, you know we actually ran a 6.7 Powerstroke lift pump on the race truck, and then we stole it and put it onto the sled pull truck, and it's been working flawlessly on the sled pull truck. So when I was putting together the 7.3, I knew that this is the route I was going to end up going. So we have our harness here. It is literally a 2-wire pigtail, power and ground to our lift pump. That's all we need. And we basically just made we got a harness from FAS, a universal harness to power it. So we've got fused and relayed power coming down to our lift pump here. The neatest thing about these 6.7 Powerstroke lift pumps is that they run 1/2-inch feed line to the engine. So these things can supply an absolute ton of fuel, and obviously they've got factory filtration. In the event that this thing would ever fail, I can pretty much roll into any dealership and get me one. Same thing with the filters. If I ever need to change the filters, I can pretty much roll into anywhere and get a set of filters for this thing. These fancy push lock style quick connect fittings that we needed to do this setup, we got these from AirDog. They're like $6 each, so pretty affordable there. The connector we actually got from Fleece. Fleece Performance makes the connector for this. And yeah, so we've got 1/2-inch feed coming into our lift pump. Then out of our lift pump, we've got 1/2-inch going to our secondary fuel filter, which again is just a stock fuel filter from a 6.7 Powerstroke. Then on the return side, coming off of the engine, this is actually 12 millimeter. So you will need a couple of 12 millimeter style quick connects, but it still goes to 1/2-inch push lock. So that's on our return side, returning to the tank. And then off of the fuel pump, we used the factory feed line going to our fuel tank, which I believe is 3/8. And so that's basically where it's returning to. So it's going to return back to the sending unit on the top of the fuel tank. And yeah, it's a pretty clean little setup. For those of you that have been following this build, you'll see this feed line is going to go all the way back, and then it's going to drop down to our big fuel tank that we have back there. We've eliminated both tanks, front and rear, and we went to just a larger rear 38-gallon fuel tank in the back. I do want to mention too, this return line. So like I said, this is going into our feed side of our sending unit. There's a sock on the sending unit. You want to remove that sock so that this doesn't end up pushing the sock off. So basically this is just dumping back into the fuel tank using the factory sending unit without any restrictions or anything. So in that first clip you guys saw, we drilled the hole in the bottom of this. This tank comes with a nice little sump here. And so that's where we put our pickup or our sump. And like I said, we've got 1/2-inch fuel line. This is a RCD Performance fuel sump here, and so they do have a return side as well. This makes it accessible to drain the fuel tank if we ever have to drain it, and then if we ever need to change things up and add a return down here, we can also do that. And so there's a straw that goes up into the fuel tank, and yeah, we can always return back to there if we needed be. So yeah, I will say I do need to come up with a better system for the secondary fuel filter. Right now I just use like a big hose clamp and I go through the frame and I just mount it to the side inside of the frame there. I do need to come up with a better system for that. I do put a little piece of rubber on the back side of that, but it just kind of hangs out there. I've never had a problem. It's the same way on the sled pull truck, but maybe one day we'll develop something and have a nice external design for mounting that. Anyway, I want to show you guys, we've got a battery. I want to show you guys, we've actually primed the fuel system and we've checked for leaks. So I want to show you guys that real quick. So right there is our FAS harness. We snuck that down to our lift pump, and then we installed that Fleece fuel pump pigtail for these 6.7 Powerstroke fuel pumps. And yeah, so that's our relay. And then we have fused power right here. Okay, and then this is going to be our ignition source. And so once obviously we get we get some other things wrapped up on this thing, eventually we'll wire this entirely and, you know, take a lot of this slack out of the wiring system. But for testing purposes, all we have to do is just touch this to the positive, and that will get our fuel pump going. So let's go ahead and do that real quick. So we're just going to watch our regulator. You can see we've already primed it, so it's bleeding down a little bit, not too bad. But as soon as we touch power, there we go. So our relay clicked over there, our fuel pump came on, and we've got the regulator set at about 65 PSI. So with that regulator set at 65 PSI, that's kind of like it's a real nice sweet spot for these 7.3s. When the fuel gets hot, your pressure is going to drop a little bit. So it's going to end up somewhere around like 60 to 62 PSI, depending on the fuel temperature. So I like to set them a little bit high at first. And then once that fuel temperature warms up, like I said, it's going to come down a little bit. So that's going to be just about perfect. We might have to dial it in a little bit more once we actually get the truck up and running, because it's actually going to be using the fuel. And so we might have a little bit of a pressure drop just from that aspect. But outside of that, we don't have any leaks. I did forget to tighten up one fitting when we first pressurized it, and so we got that one snugged up. But outside of that, no leaks. Everything is good to go. Now, for those fittings that go into the heads on all four corners there, I like to use this stuff here. This is the Loctite 545. It's a thread sealant. It's red inside of this bottle here. It seems to work really well for sealing up those fittings and preventing any fuel leakage. I know a lot of guys use different stuff, but I just wanted to show you guys that this is what I use for those style fittings that go into there. And for those of you that have been really following along on this build, there's a couple small things we did. Obviously, this is a Dorman AC delete pulley there. We did reseal our oil cooler as well, so that's fully resealed. The O-rings on that thing were just, I mean, they came out in pieces. So glad that we did that. We did install a new water pump. I've seen when trucks sit for a while, the bearing, when it first spins over, you end up with a coolant leak. So we just went ahead and took care of that. And then last but not least, we also took care of a very common problem right down there. You can see that is our engine oil dipstick. We went with the 7.3 dipstick. It's like 90 bucks, and you can do it. It's real simple to do. Our O-ring was definitely swelled up and it was definitely going to cause a leak. So we took care of that. We took care of the possible oil leak that could happen and a coolant leak that possibly could happen as well. Our AC, it was junk. The compressor was junk. I wasn't going to put the money into it, so we went ahead and picked up one of these on Amazon. They're super, super cheap on Amazon, and we got that done as well. So, man, this thing is really coming together. We are making headway on this blue OBS truck, and it's getting exciting. Priming that fuel system was a very exciting process, and I can't wait to get this thing up and running. Thank you guys for tuning in. Make sure you guys are liking and subscribing if you are new, and drop a comment. Let me know what you guys think about our efuel system, the riffraff plenums, the whole nine on everything we've been doing on this truck. Thank you guys for tuning in. We'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace.